I'm Kathy Spurlock. I'm recently retired from the New Star Media Group as General Manager and Executive Editor, and I'm now President of Spurlock Communications. I'm real pleased to be able to have the opportunity to continue to come and visit with my journalism friends. And I'd like to introduce our panel this morning. We're going to be talking about fake news, so we're going to try to be real honest. Jim Van Anglen, to my immediate left, is the Deep South News Editor in Atlanta for the Associated Press. He supervises coverage in Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. He was appointed to this position in 2014, and he joined the AP in 2011. Before joining the News Cooperative, Van Anglen spent more than a decade as editor of the Mobile Press Register and covered a variety of issues, including state and national politics. To my far left, we have Geoff Pender. Geoff is the political editor of the Clarion-Ledger in Jackson. He's covered Mississippi and briefly North Carolina politics for more than 25 years. He was part of the Pulitzer Prize winning team covering Hurricane Katrina and its aftermath at the Biloxi Sun-Herald. He's a Florence, Mississippi native and a journalism graduate at the University of Southern Mississippi. He has won numerous awards for his investigative reporting and column writing. To my right is Al Cross. Al became director of the Institute for Rural Journalism and Community Issues in 2004 after more than 26 years as a reporter at the Courier-Journal, the last 15 as the Louisville newspaper's chief political writer. Al's coverage ranged from presidential to local elections and included all facets of state government. He is also an associate professor in the School of Journalism and Telecommunications at the University of Kentucky, which is where the Institute for Rural Journalism is based. So I welcome all our panelists this morning, and I'd just like to start off by telling you guys that we're going to have really just a conversation here amongst ourselves, and we're just going to kind of jump in whenever, and then a little bit further down the line, we'll open it up for questions from you. So I'd just like to throw this out to the panel. For those of us who've made a career in dealing with facts and pursuing the truth, what worries you most about the proliferation of fake news stories now?
Well, I'm less worried about that because Facebook and Google are really taking some steps to inhibit fake news than I am about the use of the term fake news to describe journalism that has nothing fake about it but runs contrary to the message that some official or institution or demagogue wants people to believe. That's, when people say fake news, that's what we ought to pick up as our challenge. Because there's not a lot of fake news out there. There's a lot of fakery about the news from people like that.
Well, one thing I would mention, I think that as news organizations, we also have to be a little bit concerned about where are, especially, I have kids that are, I just turned 23 yesterday, so I have young kids and their dad's in this business, but I see where they get their news from, right? So where do young people coming up, where are they going to get their news from? And with the proliferation of all kinds of different sources, some very good, some not so good, you kind of have to worry about that as well. So I think it is kind of a concern long term.
Following a little on what Al said, I think there's a bigger movement or issue of part of the whole fake news narrative is an attempt to spin, to alter. We've come across terms such as alternative facts and several other things have entered our lexicon. There's a true danger there if in specially tailored news. That would be my biggest concern.
Yeah, I'm picking up on something that Jim said. The public doesn't really understand what's a legitimate news source and what's not, particularly when you're dealing with social media. And, you know, people, I know you've seen this, I've seen it a gazillion times, people will react and share without even reading what the link to the story is. They'll just move it on and make some comment about it. How can journalists and journalism institutions protect the public's interest there and help restore their confidence in our work?
Well, I do know one thing that the AP is involved with a project with Facebook to try to flag clearly fake stories or fake news, and that's been successful, I think. And so we were, glad to take part in that. We think it's important, and so that's an ongoing effort.
Yeah, I think we're kind of behind the curve in explaining to people what journalism is. Let's face facts, folks. Social media predominate. Traditional media do not, in terms of the delivery of information to people in the United States. Now, if you're talking about delivery of information on public policy questions, maybe we still dominate, but people are getting their information primarily from social media. And they have lost the distinction between journalism, opinion, fact, entertainment, and so on. I think that we got to take every opportunity we can to explain and defend what we do. And not just in the newspaper. You got to do it on social media. You got to go where the audience is. And we need to help them understand that in the big, broad world of information, journalism is a very special thing. It's an essential element of democracy. It's right in the First Amendment. It's based on a discipline of verification, which is the exact opposite of social media. And it follows an objective method. Now that doesn't mean a guarantee of objectivity, which I think is usually unattainable. What it means is that we have a consistent method of testing information so that the biases we do have don't undermine our work. The way we do this and the rules that we follow may vary from news outlet to news outlet, but it is or should be the central discipline of our craft, not the aim of our craft. Though if we follow the discipline, our aim should be true. So we need to explain that to folks, and that kind of explanation would fit on most editorial pages. I think if I were running a newspaper today, I would, and I have to admit it's been 40 years since I ran one. If I were running a newspaper today, I would put on the masthead every time I had space a short explanation of what journalism is and how we go about it, because I think people have lost that definition.
I think one thing we're seeing with this the current discussion about fake news is there's an opportunity there. It is being discussed now. We've had a wild west in social media for quite a few years now, and at least this is causing, I think, some people to take a step back to look at where that link goes, who that actually is, and maybe this is the beginning of a maturity of social media and social media consumers. Perhaps as a result of some of this debate, people will start looking at it closely. I agree with y'all. We need to, in a lot of instances, explain what we do better. A lot of the stuff we do to prevent fake news, I mean, we've hung it over, hundreds of years, this industry. Some of it might be just making clear we correct our mistakes, here's our policy, maybe putting more of that out there so it can be critiqued as well. But again, I think there is perhaps an opportunity right now with this whole debate for the press.
So, obviously there is an opportunity, and what is the responsibility of editors and publishers, especially those whose resources are dwindling, to really get out there and educate the public about objective journalism versus partisan or fake news? How do we do that, besides putting things on the editorial page?
But you gotta get on social media, and you know, it doesn't really cost a lot to do that kind of work. You just gotta think about it. And I think you need to think about it as a long-term investment. You gotta be proactive about it. You may not think that this national chatter about fake news and biased media has an impact on community journalism, but I can cite you several examples where it is having an effect. You know, we had an item on the rural blog just yesterday, Storage and Pointer Institute. Jim Warren went out and interviewed local editors, and they're seeing the impact. You got to pick up the ball and carry it. And it's a long-term investment, because if there's declining confidence in your product, then that's declining circulation.
State and local politicians have become much more adept at controlling the message, refusing to answer questions at news conferences, not responding to public information requests, planning and sometimes outright falsifying messages they present, selectively choosing friendly reporters, shutting others out. So what experiences have you had with this type of political maneuvering?
For me, my first experience with fake news, I didn't even know it was a thing at the time. It was Mississippi's 2014 U.S. Senate race. It's then that I learned that there are people who make a living creating fake news and astroturfing and things such as that. It was astounding to wake up and have essentially a fake news story in your inbox and then 2,500 messages saying, "Why aren't you covering it?" And actually, I myself, I'm sure a lot of people here spend a lot of time disproving fake news, probably time that could have been spent more wisely elsewhere. But anyway, like I said, that was my first experience. Now, what you're talking about as far as even on a state and local level, politicians trying to manage their message, yeah, that's part of that is from social media. They can end run or put their spin on things more easily. Even though some state legislators now have spokespeople. I think that's awful. But anyway, that is the way it's trending that I've seen lately.
Well, the term fake news is new, but if you think about it, the underlying argument that folks are making is, age old. I mean, as a young reporter covering the city council, I had city councilmen that said, "You're not telling the truth, you're lying. Your stories aren't true." Same thing. It's just, more prolific now, right, with social media and everything. I mean, I feel like there's a few things that we've tried to do at the AP, and I think that a lot of news organizations are doing or should do. One is, we own our mistakes, right? So if we make a mistake, we correct it and clarify it. We do it, and we gotta own it. And secondly, we have put a lot of energy into fact checking. We have boosted our fact checking operation. I'm sure y'all will see a lot more kind of fact check stories on the wire, especially out of Washington. So we've tried to do that. I would also say that one of the big criticisms of media is the use of anonymous sources. Right? So I think we all need to redouble our efforts to make those the last resort. We need to go through a rigorous process in when we actually are going to use them. And you always want to be right. When you're using anonymous sources, you really need to be right. And that is, again, that sounds kind of common sense to a lot of us, but again, I kind of go by, you know, we were all talking about social media, the use of social media, and being able to, you know, use that to kind of get out our message. Well, a lot of the young people we're hiring are like experts in this, right? I mean, they've grown up in it, and we can use their abilities and their knowledge, but we have to root them also in the, we have to really make an effort to root them in the principles upon which we, you know, live and work. And I know that's hard. I mean, we're all stretched for resources and we've got a lot going on, but you know, there's really nothing more important. I know to the AP and I know to all young, there's nothing more important than our reputation, right? And the only way, you know, I always say, there's gonna be people, I'm sorry, I'm taking all this time, but there are people that, you know, you're just not, they're not gonna believe you. I mean, there are people that think that, you know, the world's flat or that we didn't walk on the moon or whatever it may be, right? You're not going to get, those people are never going to, you know, you have to kind of come to that realization. There are going to be people that just aren't going to, you know, no matter what you say. So you need to deal with the majority, and you need to try to do, I guess, kind of, you know, set high standards, redouble your efforts to set high standards in your newsrooms.
You asked about personal experience we've had an interesting experience in Kentucky with our governor who never held elected office before. He was a self-made businessman. One of these guys who would say, you know, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich like me? And he's taken offense at stories, for example, reporting that he bought at a bargain price a mansion from a guy who he's in business with and appointed to the State Retirement Systems Board. You know, obviously a matter of public interest, but after the reporter for the Courier-Journal walked up to the house and saw the state police checkpoint being constructed and wrote a story, the governor calls the reporter pathetic and calls him a peeping Tom. His first name is Tom, unfortunately. This is the governor who doesn't hold press conferences, but does extended Facebook Live presentations and argues that they serve the same function as news conferences. And here's the most interesting thing that's happened in this war between Governor Matt Bevin and the Kentucky news media. About 2 weeks ago, his chief of staff sent out an op-ed to every Kentucky newspaper attacking the Louisville and Lexington newspapers, which had been the most aggressive in their coverage, as you might expect. And this funny thing, the only particular stories he mentioned were stories about him threatening legislators, which had been written by a reporter for community newspaper Holders. They have 5 dailies in Kentucky and 5 weeklies. But he didn't name the reporter or the chain, which to me revealed the strategy. They were simply trying to separate big media from little media. The governor has a friend in the newspaper business. I've served this guy on the KPA board, who I think he's doing too much listening to. So this op-ed comes out, and the editor of one paper surveys the other editors and says, who all's going to run this? And he found one who was going to run it. And he wrote a very good column blasting it, and to many people's surprise, the newspaper in Paducah, Paxton Media paper, this is the flagship paper of Paxton, usually a pretty reliably Republican or conservative voice, had a column from the executive editor really calling the governor out on this. And it was really good to see the rural newspapers standing up for the urban newspapers and what they do. And I hope that if that comes to pass in Louisiana and Mississippi, that you all will do likewise. You don't necessarily have to embrace the editorial policy or the attitude of a big news outlet to defend it. I like to say that most journalism is kind of like baseball. You know what the major league fielding average is? It's about 950. You know, 1 out of 20 times an error is made on a play. And I think that's just about the journalistic average too. Some of the errors are minor and some of them are major. But everybody makes mistakes. And just like Jim pointed out, we correct our errors. Ball players can't do that.
So true, so true. One of the brushes with completely manufactured news that we had in Louisiana, it was the during the last Senate race, when last gubernatorial race, when the story was put out that there were 10,000 Syrian refugees coming to New Orleans, which turned out to be not only not true, but completely not true. And the photographs and things that were used to support all these refugees that were supposedly going to descend on New Orleans were also fake. So that was something that created a lot of public uproar during the election campaign, but it did not really change the way the outcome of the election. But it was just something that just created more chaos in the campaign. So those are the kinds of things that are popping out there more and more often now. Al sent me a really interesting story last night related to just the most recent presidential press conference, or not press conference.
I forget what it was.
It was the president taking a question from a person who was a candidate for White House press secretary, one of his two questions at the press conference, and then launching into a tirade about the media.
Yeah, at these bilateral press conferences with foreign leaders, American reporters get two questions. So one of the two questions gets asked by a reporter for the Daily Mail, which is a British publication, but he's considered an American reporter because he's assigned to the White House. And he does, he tees the ball up for Trump to go after CNN, which understandably needs to be faulted for how it handled that recent story that resulted in the resignations of a reporter and producer. They went with a single anonymous source, and it proved to be faulty. And the director of CNN's investigative unit was ironically at the Investigative Reporters and Editors Convention at the time, and wasn't keeping close enough watch on his shop. People make mistakes, and unfortunately, the people who want to propagandize instead of inform are able to point to the occasional mistake and make people believe that's the standard. I go back to my 19 out of 20 rule. We get it right about as often as the major league fielders do.
What collaborative efforts do you think that our press associations should undertake together to promote the great work of our journalists and our members, and really following the idea that we provide real news in an alternative fact world?
Well, one thing I would suggest, and it may not be exactly along those lines, but is I think it's important that everyone, each news operation, has someone or a couple of folks who are dedicated and learn more about standards and what your own newsroom's standards are. So that when things come up, you have someone who's informed, that they have a base of other folks that you need to reach out to. Us at the AP would always happy to help folks too. But I'm just saying that there's that conversation, people are talking about it, and in your newsrooms that people are setting those standards and setting those expectations, so that you can kind of have those conversations. And again, I know that's difficult because we're all thinly staffed, but I really do think it's an important thing to have someone who, or somebody, a couple of people, who, when something comes up, you know what it's like. Something comes up at a, say, council meeting at night, or a press conference early in the morning, or something, blows up. You need to have resources for your folks to kind of figure out how you're going to handle things. And I think that would be a good thing, to kind of have conversations about standards.
There is some excellent research out there about how people view the news media, but we need a lot more information about how people look at newspapers like yours, community newspapers. They are the most prevalent form of journalism in this country, and yet there's very little deep research about it. The Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri does a good bit of research, and they do a poll every other year for NNA, but they really need more money to go into greater depth and to do it more frequently, and I would like to see the Newspaper Association managers at their next meeting, which is coming up, talk about how they might all make a per capita donation to do some focus groups and some deeper research, because I think it's badly needed.
So, this is really probably just most applicable to Geoff, but you know, there is a way of public distrust of journalists, and how hard is that making it for us to find and recruit our qualified people? What's the applicant pool like these days?
Specifically in our paper, I don't think we've seen it yet, but one anecdote comes to mind from just recently. In the last few weeks, I spoke with a couple of intro journalism classes in my alma mater, Southern Miss, and asked for a show of hand in each class of how many people there consider themselves news ed majors. And like 2 hands went up at each class. Most were going into marketing or some social media field or whatever. So I'm sure there's a potential there for that if this becomes some ongoing lengthy trend. I don't know if we know that for sure, but you know, the media is changing. And I think Jim mentioned when you get younger reporters, I feel like a dinosaur a lot of times when the younger reporters come in and they talk with some social media I've never even heard of, much less know how to use. Again, I'm not certain how to answer if that is currently impacting the pool or whether it will in the long run. Again, our media delivery system and everything is changing so rapidly these days. I don't know that I can quantify that, but it certainly would have the impact if you feel like everybody hates journalists. You may not want to go into that field. You know.
Well, enrollments in journalism schools are down, but they're not down all that much. At our school, we have a fairly healthy enrollment still, and ironically, I thank John Calipari for that. Because when you have America's best basketball coach, it's a good place to go cover sports. You know, Calipari has his own media operation, separate from the university that provides some jobs. We do find a little less interest, I think, in the traditional news editorial, but we still have plenty of students who understand that journalism isn't for sissies, and they're willing to do a hard job, and they're willing to confront challenges and controversy. And people like that are the people who need to be journalists.
Another thing that you just mentioned, we hire less of the traditional news ed journalists. I mean, these days, you know, some of our first questions to a candidate have to do with their digital abilities, video abilities, things like that.
Yeah, can you do a stand-up? Can you put together a short video package?
Right.
And really every journalist graduating from a journalism program in this country ought to be able to do that. I've been telling students that for a decade. You know, you got to perform on more than one platform because you got to go where the audience is. There's not much point in doing this work unless you're reaching people.
Absolutely. I've been doing some part-time work with Anglen State University, and my 2 top students that I'm working with, one is going to film school in Paris, and not as a videographer, but to actually create movies. And the other one's going to go into sports administration. And they're the strongest writers, the strongest reporters, the strongest multimedia journalists there. So I see people still definitely taking this path, but, you know, saying, you know, is there a future in a newsroom for me, a traditional newsroom? And I think Al's right, you gotta really have a passion for it.
Now, truth be told, about a third of the students in our journalism programs 10 years ago really didn't belong there. A lot of them would enroll in journalism because they thought, oh, it'd be interesting. I get to meet celebrities. I get to have my name in the paper. Well, those are absolutely the wrong reasons to be in journalism, and I'm glad to be rid of students like that. Right?
Absolutely. Well, so we'd like to, at this time, go ahead and open up for questions or comments from you, from the audience. Anybody has a question?
Yeah, I have one. My name is Tim Taylor from the Greenwood Commonwealth. I guess this is mostly addressed to Jim. Explain the AP standards on anonymous sources, because it seems to me I haven't seen any tightening in the work that I see written by AP or anyone else out of Washington. And I think that's one of the reasons that the public distrusts us, is because of the overuse of anonymous sources. Sometimes it's necessary, but I think sometimes it's lazy journalism. So what are the AP standards?
Okay, well, typically, like you were mentioning the CNN thing, which I'm not sure all the details with it, but, you know, we need at least, you know, 2 anonymous sources, or multiple anonymous sources. It also is not one person's decision whether to move that story on the wire. You know, I've had cases where I have a reporter who has a story that has anonymous sources. It starts with me and that reporter having a conversation. I get involved, our folks in Atlanta and our regional bureau, and then we go to our folks in New York at our national AP standards desk, and folks that work doing AP standards, and we have a conversation and go through that. So I will tell you it is a rigorous process because I've been through it. Now, some beats, some places, you tend to have, you need to use them more than others. It's like everything else. The folks that work for me, and you know, we run into it sometimes, but you know, our folks that work in Washington, or they work overseas, they work, you know, they're covering, you know, let's say the CIA or other, you know, some of those beats tend to have more than others that you have to use them. I don't know if that answered your question, but
And Jim, part of those standards are that this is the only way to get the information.
yeah,
right?
clearly. I mean, it's we can't get the story any other way, right? And then I was more trying to talk about the process, yeah. But we have to, you know, you have to try to find it another way, and if you can. Is the story important? You know, is it an important piece of information? The things that go into those conversations, my first question is always, how does your source know that? How do they know that? Frequently, a lot of the anonymous sources issues that we deal with my reporters are on breaking news events. Actually, a lot of times it's, you know, multiple shootings, you know, massive fires, whatever it may be, there's a breaking, and, you know, you're trying to work your sources to get, you know, let's say a confirmation on are there people dead, how many are dead, you know, things like that, as opposed to maybe some of the bigger kind of national, broader kind of issues. And those are conversations, that's the first question I always ask. Is how does your source know that information? And quite frankly, there's a lot of times you'll find that those sources say, well, I heard it from somebody, or I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, they might have heard it from the other source.
Right, exactly. I have run into that. I have run into that.
You know, Jim, I think the Washington Post and the New York Times have pretty much the same standards, the Wall Street Journal and so on. All the major media have pretty much the same standards, but they know they're under increasing scrutiny, and increasingly you see the Post, and I think the Times too, giving the number of sources that they got the information from. There was one story recently in which they had 9 unnamed sources telling them the same thing. You know, the Trump administration may be unfriendly to the news media and public, but there's lots of leaking to the news media and private affairs.
Right, and one of the things too is you try to be transparent and specific, and we just don't typically, usually, say just sources, right? We will say a source and why are we granting them anonymous status? How do they know the information? Like you said, in certain stories it may be we need to say how many different sources we spoke to, or we try to be as specific as possible, as opposed to just saying a source told us.
And I think one thing to remind readers of when they question the use of anonymous sources is that almost all the stories based on anonymous sources turn out to be true.
So, just one follow-up to that. Does the AP have different math sources versus staff written?
Yes, now, I actually ran into this just last week. I was having a conversation with one of our members who had a really, really good story. It was not in Louisiana, Mississippi. So there's no need here. And we decided not to move that story to the wire, and I had to have a conversation with that editor. And it was a question of, you know, we have a rigorous, like I said, process that we go through. We typically don't pick up member copy that has anonymous sources in it, and it's not to be critical of our members. It is not being whatever disparaging of their work. We put our folks through that. You know, we feel like we have to vet those sources ourselves. Now, would I never say never? Like I said, I don't like to ever guarantee things. But I'm just telling you that that's typically the standard that we have for member copy that has anonymous sources. We typically don't pick it up. And we do have a conversation about it too. So, like I said, among our own editors, and usually we'll reach out to a member as well and have that conversation. But if we're going to move them, we wanted to go through our own kind of vetting process that we're comfortable with it.
Great. Do you have more questions? Yes, Andy.
When CNN had recently retracted the story and 3 staffers lost their jobs, how badly has that hurt the entire news media? Because everyone kind of lumps the media as one big organization.
Well, sure, it hurts. You know, like I said earlier, it's real easy to take a few examples and use that to characterize the entire press corps. And that's why people in those positions ought to be more careful than ever. And you know, CNN let us all down when they did that. And I think the fact that those people lost their jobs very quickly was a pretty good testimony to the fact that the price is paid when mistakes like that are made. But yeah, sure, it hurts. It hurts everybody's credibility when something like that happens.
And like Al said, unfortunately, the one mistake is the one that people latch on to and remember versus the, you know, I always used to tell copy editors because they would say, oh, you know, we catch 300 errors a day and this one thing gets through. And I said, well, you know, it was the front page headline. You know, there's no difference. But people do tend to latch on to that one mistake.
And that is, you know, I wish more editors had taken the opportunity of that mistake to write about how they keep their staff from making mistakes, and how investigative journalism sometimes stubs its toe because you know, kind of makes the metaphor gets out over its skis, goes a little too far. You know, we ought to not engage in sweeping errors under the rug, and I'm talking about big errors like that. We ought to say this was an exception to the rule, that generally you can believe what you hear from major news media. And when we get it wrong, we admit it.
Al, do you see more, I don't know, what would you call it, reluctance or people less likely to correct things with our online, digital, social media reports, even from larger outlets.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because it's so easy. Let's say you get a number wrong in a story, it's 13 instead of 12. Just slip back in there and change that number and don't make any acknowledgement that it was changed. I think that's being dishonest with the readers. You know, anytime we change something on our site, that's the Rural Blog or Kentucky Health News, we put the old stuff in strike through and put the new stuff in underline, show people that a correction was made. And I think that's the straightforward way to go about it, and it's the only way to go about it.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I'm bad with time, it goes by too quickly, but, you know, we started the latest, which is a feature that we move, where we, especially on big breaking stories. But on all of our stories, you'll notice if we make a correction in cycle, there should be a note on there that what we changed. You know what I mean? We'll put a note in there to say this, like, you know, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's basically, you know, this item was changed because, you know, the age of somebody was incorrect, or, you know what I mean? We kind of make that in-cycle corrective. Even though we don't do a formal correction where we actually rerun it, you know what I mean? Whatever. Out of cycle, if it's out of cycle, then we do a traditional corrective. You know, we try to make sure that all the forms of that story, because now we have a lot of different forms of stories, we try to make sure they're all, you know, each one of those is correct.
And when you speak of cycles, is AP still using a formal AM/PM cycle now?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's yeah, I mean, basically, you know, if something happens, you know, I would say that, like, my thing is if you know, let's say it's, what time is it now? It's whatever, like 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. You know, if we had something that moved, you know, 24 hours ago, we're going to do a corrective.
Yeah.
I mean, an actual traditional corrective. But if something moved at 2 a.m. this morning, and we want to update it, then, like I said, we will update it in cycle, but we will put a note saying, hey, we changed this because it was incorrect.
I think that's a real important piece of the conversation with digital media and breaking news stories in particular. I mean, everybody's had the experience, I'm sure, of covering a breaking news story and getting things posted and getting things up and getting incorrect information from sources. You know, getting an incorrect name from the police officer or something else as you go through, and being able to document chronologically and describe what changes were made and what corrections were made, I think really adds to our credibility.
And I think a lot of our, you know, we see a lot of member copyright, so, and, you know, I think a lot of our members do that, actually, I would say. Not everybody. I mean, there are some stories we'll see that, you know, like an age will be changed and we'll happen to notice it at, like, you know, 9 o'clock at night. You know, something that we picked up in the morning. That can be difficult sometimes to navigate because those little things are being changed. And, you know, we have folks that work 24/7, right? Or not, they work, we are staffed 24/7, I should say. So, you know, sometimes it's my morning desk person who picks something up at 4 a.m., but, you know, something will get changed at 7 o'clock at night and we won't notice it. So, it's easier for us, just selfishly, I guess, when we see a note on there or that this story's been changed for whatever reason. And then if we picked it up, we can go back and change it.
Any more questions? Yes.
Kind of for Geoff and maybe for the others, have y'all seen sort of a trickle down from the president's hostility towards the media? Do you see local state legislators, people like that?
I can say on the state level, yes, certainly we've seen a trickle down in that. I think there's probably a lot of folks in here have seen governors, some legislators making, you know, similar remarks. Sometimes it's hard to tell exactly who they're aiming at. Other times I feel like they're aiming at me very directly or other colleagues. Yeah, it's you know, that's become a theme, and you know.
That was the theme of the story on the corner this week by James Warren. We called around and talked to some reporters and editors in smaller markets, and they said, you know, they're feeling the heat because the president and his ilk have put up a great deal of anti-news media feeling. And just as an aside, we don't always say news media. Let's not just say media, because, you know, the media is just, you know, everything, every channel for every piece of information. News media do journalism, and we ought to try to you know, make that distinction every time we can. And also, media are, and there are more media than there ever had been. I hate to hear national folks say media is, but there was a really good column in the Walla Walla Union Bulletin several weeks ago by Brian Hunt, the editor. He had been asked to give a speech at the local library about journalism and democracy, and he boiled it down to a 2,400-word column, which we excerpted on the Rural Blog. I just want to give you 2 or 3 points. This is available on the Rural Blog still. That's IRJCI, my acronym, .blogspot.com. He said that after Trump was elected, he began hearing from readers who seemed confused about what was published as a news story and what was published as a personal opinion column or editorial. Definitions that newspapers have relied on for decades are suddenly not widely understood. And he gives examples of the extreme feelings without being judgmental about them. I think this is really important when you're dealing with media critics. These are his words. I've been challenged on why we include people of color in our newspaper. I've heard from readers who question why, when 2/3 of our region voted for Trump, the UB would ever publish anything remotely critical of his presidency. I learned things in these conversations. Most notably, the people I speak with are not unaccomplished, not unintelligent, not uncaring. We know these people. You know these people. Fake news and the isolated intolerance that can feed it gets to us all. That's a very respectful attitude. You know, we got some crazies out there, but there's a lot of people who have had a natural skepticism of the news media who now are more skeptical or doubtful of it because of the atmosphere that the election and this presidency has created. And we've got to deal with it, but we have to deal with it in a non-adversarial way. And that's why I think this column by Brian Hunt was very good. And here's the point to remember about this column. I called him up to see how it went over. And he said that the number of subscription stops that readers blamed on bias of the newspaper had declined significantly. That column worked. This is the way to deal with that kind of criticism. And it's available on the Rural Blog if you want to look it up, and I've got a copy here if anybody wants to make a copy.
Really quick, back to your question, though, one example, I don't know if you've seen this past legislative session, we had a Judiciary Chairman, Andy Gibson, in the House, killed out of hand without a voting committee to divorce reform bills, and he made some comments, and he proceeded to get lit up on social media. He got really angry about the response, and I feel like, I respect Andy, but I feel like he wanted to respond to the social media blowback he got, but he couldn't really do that, so he got mad at the media in general. The news media, I guess we should say.
Yeah, whatever media.
Or the deep media, I'm not sure who was mad at, but he got really mad. These, since you can go see, I may butcher the name, MS Truth Journal, I believe is the name of the publication now. But anyway, he started that after that experience. So like I said, I felt like some of his anger was a little misdirected. More so at the hundreds of nasty Facebook messages he got than the actual news coverage. But there again, he's created his own site, and more power to it. I mean, our industry needs to be introspective and open to criticism and everything else. But again, to answer your question, yeah, we've seen the same narrative is growing on the state level, certainly.
You think they believe it, or they're just using it to deflect criticism?
Look, I mentioned Representative Gibson in person. Like I said, I respect him, and look, Andy believes what he believes. So I'm certainly not going to question him there. I don't know,
I think someone could think about it deeply. I think they do it almost reflexively to play to the base.
Yeah. And it is in a lot of cases playing to the base. I mean, you hear, again, that same narrative gets ginned up. I don't know if it's going to be an ongoing, decades-long narrative or short-lived, but like I said, early on, I look at it as an opportunity. If consumers of media, be it social media, whatever, far right, far left, outpost, if it's going to make them be a little more discerning about what they're reading or viewing, that's good. I think that's going to help those of us that strive to do it right anyway. I think that's got to be good for us in the long run.
It does worry me when I see state legislators adopting this attitude, because those are the people who pass and repeal public notice laws. And public notice is probably more important now to community newspapers than at any time in the last 100 years in terms of its percentage of revenue that it provides. And we have to defend public notice as the third stool of freedom of information. Open records, open meetings, and public notice. Good public notice laws sometimes lead to stories and keep government accountable like journalism does, and journalism is less able to do it now because there are fewer journalists. We have good reasons to fight for our public notice laws. Public service reasons, not just money reasons.
Why, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about how you all see the future of weeding out the real news from the fake news. I guess we all know when the internet came out, a website called Snopes arose to try to winnow out fake news. And anybody can create a website now and make it look real and post a rumor and fake news. How do you see the future in terms of winnowing out fake news from real news? What does that look like in your crystal ball?
Jim, what's AP doing with Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook, and we were working with Facebook and a few other groups, organizations that are, and we, go through and fact check and look for stories that are, subclass stories flagged to us. Then we will go through and look at it and then flag it as fake news. I think you'll see more of that.
And then Facebook is also, maybe with other folks, trying to flag stuff that's posted on social media that is just pure fake.
Right, yeah.
Being off base. There's one other thing that I wish community newspapers would do more of, and that is fact checking or using the fact check service called factcheck.org. This was the very first of the fact checking services. It's run out of the Annenberg Center at the University of Pennsylvania. It was started by Brooks Jackson, formerly of the Wall Street Journal and CNN. He retired, but now he's back working because there's so many facts to be checked. And this service is available for free. You can take anything they write and use it in your newspaper just as long as you give them credit for it. The other services like PolitiFact and Fact Checker and the Washington Post don't work that way. I think community newspapers need to remember that most of their readers don't read a daily newspaper or don't read a newspaper daily. And yet they are citizens of the state and nation just as much as they are citizens of their locality. And if you're going to let them get their information, get all their information about state and national issues from television and social media, you are doing them a disservice. There's an issue a week that you could take from Fact Check, and they run it right down the line. They're as tough on Democrats as they are on Republicans. You can take an issue a week and say, here's something that's being debated nationally. Here's the truth. We're about giving you the truth and helping you be a better citizen.
I tend to agree with that, and I especially think that news media organizations have a responsibility to continue to repeat ways that people can discern if a website's fake, or I think that people tend to read a headline, see the picture, see the image, and if they agree with the headline, hit like and share and make some comment about it. I really believe that people do not have the attention span to go in and click a headline and go down and read. They just pass it on.
And these pieces of advice, these warnings, this guidance on how to evaluate that stuff can be boiled down into 6 or 7 lines. It's pretty easy to post it on social media. Just keep it in a safe get and put it out there. Constantly remind people of what they ought to be doing.
Safe get.
Sorry, old term.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we're going in the opposite direction. Many legitimate news sites, in their desperation for advertising, have contracted out with these things like Outbrain and some of these other. You'll see a group of stories at the bottom, and it's really, there's usually a weird photo with it, and it's just junk.
Yeah.
And you'll see this on USA Today. You'll see it at New York Times websites. Will put these things on and watch. I mean, it's just
Everybody's hungry for revenue. Everybody's hungry for clicks.
Yeah, Kathy, you touched on the idea about confirmation bias.
Yeah.
The fact that people will only look for information that supports their position. And so in social media, you have some, I guess, fake news sites that cater to that for this clickbait. It's just a matter of connecting the ads. What role does professional journalism have, or does it have a role, I should ask, professional journalism would have in just trying to combat confirmation bias, somehow making the awareness that, you gotta really disprove what you're looking for instead of just prove your position in order to kind of reach a conclusion. Is there a role in that, or?
I think there is a commentary role in that. I think the commentary role is one that says, don't just read Occupy Democrats, or
Right.
this or that. I mean, really got to look for both sides of the story, and because especially the way that the logarithms are written for social media. I mean, if you're going to be fed things that you like, things that confirm your own thoughts and opinions. So if you really want to be a well-minded person, how do you get to the other side? And I think that's a commentary place. Be uncomfortable, read a little bit about something that's not exactly your thought process. And a lot of people aren't going to do that. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want their thoughts and beliefs interrupted. They're gonna just go for things that they agree with. But some people will, and I think that it's really important to teach our children and our grandchildren that there are two sides to every story, or multiple sides to every story, and how to find these other sources of information, because it's not going to be something that they're going to grow up with natively.
think that's a very important question, how you attack confirmation bias, because, it's part of human nature. That's a pretty hard thing to change.
More questions?
Newspapers, you don't find that, at least it seems to me that over the last 15, 20 years, that the straight news stories are not as straight as they once were. Lead in like, according to many people oppose recent action taken by New Orleans City Council. I mean, rather than the action taken by New Orleans City Council was, and then maybe not at the bottom, so says that. It just seems that cheapens our publication. Like it's kind of like a response to the getting something out quick, or the national news trend. You know what you're getting from Fox, you know what you're getting from MSNBC, but shouldn't we be straighter? I mean, and what's editorial is editorial, what isn't. It just scares me. I see it. I said I'm going to come to it. Strike.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that the New York Times just, staff of the New York Times just made a very public statement about. I mean, there's not the level of reflection and editing and conversation that there once was in newsrooms. I mean, it's just not there. There are no, most places don't have copy editors. Most places don't have, or the editor who's in charge of working with reporters is also doing 15 gazillion other things. And there's not that one-on-one mentoring that occurred years ago. And so reporters who were forced to become multimedia journalists are also developing their brand, they're posting their own stories without editing or even peer review, they're doing their own videos. So it's real easy, I think, for some of that bias that would be ordinarily edited out or questioned in the process to get in and to be published on some platform.